The number one thing that stops people, from my observation, is to compare themselves to others instead of compare their daily actions to their own highest priority. As long as you put people on pedestals and inject their values and try to live in their values, as long as you put people in pits and project your values and expect them to live in your values, you'll have futility.
Hey there, and welcome to the Unleash Your Greatness Within podcast. I'm TJ Hoisington, and let me tell you, I have a new success interview for you, and it was rich and powerful. I really mean that, so you're gonna wanna watch the whole interview. I had the opportunity of interviewing Dr. Demartini.
You already know. My passion and my mission to help you unleash your greatness within. My heart goes out to the underdogs that's on their way. If you think you can go from good to great, okay, let's motivate. GreatnessWithin.com. TJ Hoisington. GreatnessWithin.com.
You see, Dr. Demartini is a global researcher, global educator, behavioral expert. He's written, I think, 40 books. I'm not even sure what the count is. So many books. What an amazing message that he has. And you know what? He holds nothing back. In this interview that you're about to listen to, and I suggest you go all the way to the end because he leaves nuggets all the way through. Powerful. Powerful. I really mean that. Now, if you're watching that on my YouTube channel, hey, do me a favor, subscribe to my YouTube channel and make sure you click that notification bell so that you're the first to be notified when I come out with a new motivational message or success interview like this. All right? Now, without any further ado, let's jump right into the interview. Dr. Demartini, welcome to the Unleash Your Greatness Within podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be on.
You bet. It's great to have you. What a pleasure. So one of the things that we like to start off with all of our success interviews here on the Unleash Your Greatness Within podcast is whenever we have a guest on, we like to get their backstory. So if you can give us a little of your history, that would be great.
How I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. Where did it all begin?
Yeah. Well, I was born with my arm and leg turned in, and I had to wear from 1.5 to 4. I had to wear braces on my arm and leg. I also had a speech impediment, and I had to go to a speech pathologist and use strings and buttons in my mouth as a kid.
Really?
When so I had constraint, and that probably made me want to be free a bit.
Yep.
And I had speaking problems. Then when I got to first grade, when I got into elementary school, I found out that I had dyslexia, and the teacher asked my parents to come to school and said, "I'm afraid your son's not going to be able to read. He's not going to be able to write. He's not going to be able to communicate effectively. I don't think he's going to go very far in life, amount to much in life," that kind of thing. I had to wear a dunce cap back in almost 60 it was.
Yeah.
And so it was true. I did have problems. I didn't know how to read, and I couldn't write and speak and all that properly. I got through school with the help of the smartest kids by asking questions, which I'm pretty well known today by my questions that I ask.
Yes.
And because I had to wear braces, I'm on the go all the time. I full-time travel. So I was probably a void that drove that. And then that worked. I made it through school, barely made it through school until I turned 12. At 12, my parents moved to a small town outside where there was a lot of low socioeconomics and there was no smart kids. I didn't have anybody to ask questions to, and I ended up failing. And I dropped out of school, and I started living on the streets when I was 13. Oh. So I was a street kid from 13 to 18. And I first lived locally, and then I ended up living at the beach, and because I was okay with surfing.
Okay.
But Texas wasn't a surf capital.
Right.
So California is where I headed. So at age 14, I hitchhiked to California and down into Mexico and went surfing. At 15, I panhandled enough money in California beaches to go to Hawaii. And I first lived under a bridge, then in a park bench, then in a bathroom, abandoned car, a tent. And I was a socially climbing hippie surfer. Mm-hmm. And I was surfing, and I rode big waves. I got into some surf movies and surf magazines. I rode big waves back then. Oh. Then I nearly died at 17. And in the recovery from that, a lovely lady found me in my tent nearly dead. I was unconscious for 3 days. And she took me to a little health food store to try to get some nutrition in me. And that led me to a yoga class where a speaker was speaking named Paul Bragg. And one night in 1 hour, this one man with one message spoke to me, and he was so inspiring. That was the first night in my life that I thought maybe, just maybe, I could overcome my learning problems and learn how to read and become intelligent someday. I never thought I'd ever be intelligent. I was told it dunce. So that was the night I saw a dream and a vision with his advice and help in his lecture. Because he said that we had a body, we had a mind, and a soul. And the body must be guided by the mind, and the mind must be directed by the soul to maximize human potential. And he said that we must get really clear about what we would love to dedicate our lives to. We want to make sure that we fill our thoughts, our vision, our internal dialogue, and our feelings with the things that are absolutely the highest priority things that are most meaningful to us. And take command of those things. Nobody ever told me like that. Nobody talked to me like this.
Right.
This guy was amazing. So that was the night I saw a dream, a vision, which is painted and sitting in my office today, a big painting of me standing in front of 1 million people speaking intelligently. And I saw a dream and vision to do that. And I set out that night with the help of him and a series of events to step foot on every country on the face of the earth, learn how to read, learn how to become intelligent, and share whatever I discovered with as many people who'd be willing to listen. So that was the beginning.
Wow.
And that was 47, almost 48 years ago.
Wow.
And I've been on a mission. I've been on a mission ever since doing that. I'm almost 66 now.
Wow.
And I've been on a mission to do that ever since. So that was 1972.
That's an amazing story. I was born in 1973. So anyway, what an amazing story. So can I ask, why did you almost die? What was that about?
I had strychnine and cyanide poisoning. I was living sort of off the land there, eating seaweed and all kind of stuff, whatever I could grab and stuff. And there was a plant there that I was eating without realizing that had those compounds in it, and it was accumulating. At first, it locked up my fingers. I kind of looked like Joe Cocker in those days.
Okay.
I didn't know what was going on. Everybody said, well, you're surfing 11 hours a day. You're sweating it, not realizing your electrolytes are imbalanced. But it wasn't that. It was strychnine. And then what happened is started creeping back up, and eventually it stopped my diaphragm.
Mm.
So I was surfing a very big wave and my diaphragm stopped. So anyway, that was a really perfect pivoting point in my life. It was, everything is on the way. It's not in the way. And anything you're not grateful for is baggage. Anything you're grateful for is fuel. And I'm a firm believer that was an absolutely essential component of what I was here to do. So that turned things around, led me to that little store, led me to the yoga class, led me to learn from this man. And then I moved from there back to, I flew back to Los Angeles, hitchhiked back to Texas, met with my parents, hadn't seen them in years. I had amazing parents. I never left them because I had any differences with the parents. I had lovely parents.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
It's just that I ended up not being able to make it in school, and I became street. They suggested that I take a GED, a high school equivalency. I took that test guessing with a little affirmation that Paul Bragg gave me, that I'm a genius and I apply my wisdom. Because I told Paul Bragg that I don't know how to read. I've never been able to read. I can't speak properly. But I dream about being a teacher and overcoming that. And he told me to say every single day, I'm a genius and I apply my wisdom. Say it every single day, never miss a day for the rest of your life. And sooner or later, the cells of your body will tingle with it, and so will the world.
Okay, slow down. Say that. I'm a genius.
And I apply my wisdom.
And I apply my wisdom over and over.
I've said that every single day since that day. I later learned, with the help of my mom, what a genius was. I didn't know what a genius was. I said, what's a genius? And she said, well, people like Albert Einstein and Da Vinci.
Yeah.
I realized that a genius is one who listens to their inner voice and obeys their inner vision and obeys that and follows that and doesn't let the world on the outside interfere with that vision and internal dialogue on the inside. And so I pursued that. I came back, I took a GED, and I guessed and I passed. It was like a miracle. I had me a high school equivalency. To my parents, so in case you need a job, you got to have at least a high school degree.
Yeah.
I didn't have high school. I never finished high school. They then said, well, since you passed that, why don't you try to take a college class, college entrance, ACT, I think it was called. And I closed my eyes and I guessed. I couldn't read half the questions. I guessed, saying that little affirmation, and I filled in little dots, and some friggin' magical thing, I passed. They said, well, why don't you try to take a college class while it's summertime and the waves aren't big? You know, parents are trying to encourage me to try it because they're seeing maybe he'll go back to school kind of thing. I took my first class in history, and I got 2 weeks into the summer school class. I took my test, and I went outside the door the next day, and I realized I got a 27. I needed a 72 to pass. I got a 27. Everybody was above 72 except me. I was pretty devastated because all I could hear is my first grade teacher. I'm afraid your son will never read, he'll never write, he'll never communicate, never amount to thing, never go very far in life. I remember getting in my car, scrunching down, I was embarrassed, driving home crying, and I curled up in a fetal position under a Bible stand. This stand.
Okay.
My stand just fell over.
Oh, no.
Okay. And I was literally sitting having a really low moment. My mom came home from shopping and she said, son, what's wrong? She said, hadn't seen me crying in years. And I said, Mom, I blew the test. I guess I don't have what it takes. I guess I'll never read, write, communicate, etc. And she didn't know what to say. And finally, she put her hand on my shoulder. And she knew that I had a dream of being a teacher. And so she said, son, whether you become a great teacher, healer, philosopher, and travel the world like you want to do, whether you return to Hawaii and ride giant waves like you've done, or you turn to the streets and panhandle as a bum again, I just want to let you know your father and I are going to love you no matter what you do, boy. When she said that, I felt loved. I felt appreciated. She was certain. She was present. That was very powerful. Those are very important components in what I teach today. And I remember my hand going into a fist when she said that. And I looked up and I saw the vision I saw the night I met Paul Bragg. I mean, standing on a balcony in front of 1 million people. And I said to myself, I'm going to master this thing called reading and learning. I'm going to master this thing called teaching and philosophy. And I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to travel whatever distance. I'm going to pay whatever price to give my service of love. I'm not going to let any human being on the face of the earth stop me, not even myself. I gave up. I got up and I hugged my mom. I went into my room. I got a dictionary out and I started memorizing 30 words a day. And my mom tested me on 30 words, the pronunciation, spelling, and meaning application, and had to write a sentence with it. And I was not allowed to go to bed until 30 new words were added to my vocabulary. That led me to eventually being able to pass school. That led me to start excelling in school. And that allowed, all of a sudden, people started to ask me for information, and I started teaching by the time I was 18. And I never stopped. And within a very short period of time, I'm now excelling because I wanted to go to school when all the other kids were just going to school because it's what you do.
Yeah, right.
I wanted to learn.
Yep.
I wanted to learn every single thing I could get my hands on. I didn't care. Anything to do with maximizing human awareness potential, I wanted to know. I was about 19, almost a year later, and I went to my mom, and she said, son, what do you want for your birthday? Because I was born on Thanksgiving Day. What do you want for your birthday and for Christmas? And I looked at her with a straight in the eye, and I said, Mom, I want the greatest teachings on the face of the earth by the greatest minds who ever lived. The greatest writings humanity's ever created from around the world. And she said, you sure you don't want a t-shirt? I said, no, Mom, I don't care about a t-shirt.
You wanted knowledge.
I wanted knowledge.
Yeah.
So she happened to be the sister of a guy who was a professor at MIT. My Uncle Ralph, I called him.
Okay.
And she contacted her brother, and he sent as a gift 2 giant 6 by 6 by 6 foot wooden crates on a flatbed truck to our home, filled with thousands of books. A massive library. I got a crowbar out, opened up those boxes when they laid it on the ground, and filled my room with thousands of books. I had a little yoga mat in the center, facing the window for the sun, and I filled my room with books, and I started reading books, 18 to 20 hours a day. And I tried to learn everything I can with a dictionary. Any word I didn't know, I looked up a dictionary. And he had some fantastic books. Philosophers, scientists, Nobel Prize winners, great thinkers. And there's thousands. So I started devouring everything I could and started living encyclopedias, reading encyclopedia sets, 8 sets, complete sets I started reading. Anything to do that would give me a foundation of knowledge that would help build an educational system that would allow people to do something extraordinary with their life. That's all I was interested in. And I wanted to get the originators of the fields. So I got the actual polymathic individuals that were the ones that created original ideas that started new fields. Mm. You know, like Gilbert and magnetism and different people in different fields. Because I wanted the people that were the originators, the creators, and stand on the shoulders of those giants. Yep. I didn't want to subordinate to copycats. I wanted the original thinkers. Because I wanted to create original ideas that serve humanity. I wanted to create a global company of teaching. I want to become financially independent. I want to be able to have a global family dynamic. I want to be able to have social influence and meet amazing people and do amazing things and consult and work with them. I want to be able to have a vital body. On my 61st birthday, I went back to North Shore just in November last year, and I surfed pipeline at 14 foot.
You did. Wow.
So I did it at 65. And then I said, okay, I want to have a physical stamina, and I also want to be inspired, and I want to master the art of how do you live an inspired life? Yeah. How do you prioritize your life, fill your day with the highest priority actions, delegate everything else off your plate, engage other people in employment and in helping the economy, and go do something inspiring to your life and exemplify what's possible, as Einstein said. So that has been my mission for 47, 48 years, and I'm on track.
And I'm on track. I love that. What a beautiful story. And what that really shows forth is the true essence, I believe, of the true meaning of personal development. Look, I interviewed yesterday John Assaraf. I've interviewed a lot of high achievers like yourself. I mean, thinkers and so forth. And I would say a high percentage of them started off in some form or another with a difficulty or an impairment. But they worked hard to overcome it. It's almost like, tell me what your thought is on this. It's almost like having those challenges with a person with vision drives them to put those challenges in the past, to move past them. And I stem from that because I don't think I've shared this on the podcast before, that Dr. Benjamin Bloom in the 1950s, somewhere around that time frame, did research of 120 different top athletes, actors, writers, and so forth, 120 different fields. And when he studied them, he found that there was one common denominator that equaled their success. Now, at the time, the belief was talent. It was all about talent. But he found that the only consistent factor that determined these people's success was determination. Because what he said in that research is that when he interviewed the parents of that high achiever, you know what the parents said? They said, well, actually, the person that had the natural gifts and talent was so-and-so's brother or sister, but they didn't use it. I hear your story, and I think John Ashraf yesterday talked about how he left school at 11 years old. I didn't read my first book until I was a junior in high school because I was in special resources in the 4th grade because I couldn't read. I'm seeing I want your thoughts on this because I'm seeing a pattern of difficulty is really a blessing. What's your thought?
Genius is awakened not by support, but by challenge.
Oh.
Support makes us juvenilely dependent and inject the values of other people who support us as a dependency. And then we attempt to be somebody or not. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, envy is ignorance and imitation is suicide. The moment we minimize ourselves to others and subordinate to others and put them on pedestals because we're too humble to admit what we see in them is inside us, we'll inject their values, attempt to be somebody we're not, and be second at somebody else instead of being first to who you are. It's the challenges in life that make us go back to our highest values, where we have the most intrinsic call to do it and the biggest drive to do it. It's the challengers that make genius. It's the challengers that make innovation. It's the challenges that make original thinking. So the people that have had the most down and outs can be a turning point for their life.
Yes.
We can become victims of history or masters of destiny out of a challenge. And if we become a victim of history out of it, we blame things on the external world and we look for solutions in the external world. But if we are masters of destiny, we look and we realize it had nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with our perception, decisions, and actions, which are the only 3 things we have control over in our lives. And if we can see that our perceptions are on the way, not in the way, and that the challenges are making us great instead of making us small, we'll do something enormous. We'll have enormity instead of conformity.
Wow, that's rich. I hope the audience hears the essence of that. Listen, when I worked with Tony Robbins in 1999, I was a trainer for him, a speaker for him. I gave 240 different presentations in 1 year. It was a great learning period. So I left after about a year when I was sitting in one of his seminars, and he said, when would now be a good time? And that was like a pivot moment for me. And I called into the company and said, I'm leaving in 2 weeks to start my own company that I've been doing now for 20 years. But the first 5 years of building that company, I was falling flat on my face until I was forced to write my first book, If You Think You Can, in the backseat of my car after I lost almost everything except for my family. I lost everything. I was living in the basement of my parents' house. I realized through that pain that it was because of that pain and being forced in my car that those first 5 years I was speaking like Tony Robbins.
Turn to be a second.
I wasn't speaking like TJ. And when I was forced to write If You Think You Can, and I had to think through all the principles through my own philosophy and my own beliefs, I found TJ's voice. I don't think that would have happened, like you just said, had I not had the struggle.
The magnificence of who you are is far greater than any fantasies you'll impose on yourself. And anytime you live in the shadows of anyone, you won't stand on the shoulders of giants and you won't become a giant. So that's perfect. What you said is so accurate.
So rich. You know, I believe that every human being, maybe you have a take on this. I'm sure you do. Every human being has spiritual gifts. I believe that one of my spiritual gifts, and I believe it's one of yours too, is we feel things. And from those feelings, we have ideas that come in our head that equal reality, maybe in the short term or in the long term, if we will follow that still small voice. I believe that every human being came to this earth with a set of spiritual gifts, but many don't find them. But if they will find them, the world is unlimited to them. Their destiny awaits their arrival. Thoughts about that?
You're right on the money. The number one thing that stops people, from my observation, is to compare themselves to others instead of compare their daily actions to their own highest priority. As long as you put people on pedestals and inject their values and try to live in their values, as long as you put people in pits and project your values and expect them to live in your values, you'll have futility. Because infatuation and resentments occupy space and time in your mind and keep you out of your soul.
Ooh.
And the moment you actually focus on what's truly your calling and your true mission and your true telos, as Aristotle called it, and prioritize your day and fill your day with the highest priority actions that inspire you, that spontaneously are called to act, that make a difference, that deep meaning, that's the day when you don't have entropy interfering with a long-term mission. Immediate gratification costs you. Long-term mission pays. But that only occurs by living by the highest priorities. And that's the key. Negentropy, or life physics, as Schrodinger said, is greater than entropy, death physics. And entropy takes over whenever we inject the values of others into our life and try to live by conformity instead of enormity. The moment we're too humble to admit what we see in the greats around us, within us, is the day we cloud the clarity of our own mission and shrink instead of shine and play in mediocrity instead of greatness.
So what do you do? This is rich. What do you do through maybe your famous breakthrough experience, or what do you do to move someone that's maybe 10% of who they can really become, to get them to get to 60, 70, 80% of their true selves, or 100%? What tools or strategies, or just beginners? I know they would have to go to your
many things. One of the things that anything that we admire in somebody that we're too humble to admit we have, because we think they have something we don't. The only reason we admire it is because we have what we see in them, and it's actually us too humble to admit we have it, but we have it. The same thing for the things we despise. We're too proud to admit it, but we have it. We don't ever have a resentment to somebody else unless it's reminding us of something we feel ashamed about in the past. And we don't ever admire admiration unless there's something we've done and we know we have that capacity. So instead of sitting there living in their shadow, it's wise to ask this question: what specific trait, action, inaction do I perceive this individual that is great, as a great hero, great leader, has? Once I identify what that trait is, then I ask this question: go to a moment where and when I perceive myself displaying or demonstrating that same or similar behavior, that trait, action, inaction. Mm-hmm. And where was it, when was it, who was it to, and who perceived it? Where was it, when was it, who was it to, and who perceived it? And dig into my consciousness and bring from the unconscious to the conscious the realization that the only reason you admire it is because you have it, but you've been denying it. Wake it up. And once you realize you have it quantitatively and qualitatively equal to what you admire, you realize why you admired it, because they were a reminder of what you're denying, but you actually have. And the moment you do, you won't be living in their shadows. You'll be honoring them and appreciating them as a teacher to wake you up to what you're denying in yourself, because at the level of the soul, nothing's missing in you. There's nothing missing in you.
Love that.
When you finally realize that, you'll stand on the same playing fields and go beyond, because you'll take off where they left off.
Let me emphasize that. I remember in the basement of my parents' house watching Oprah in the few minutes that I turned on the TV, and Debbie Ford happened to be a new author, brand new. This is many years ago.
On the Shadow.
On the Shadow, the dark side of the light chasers.
Yes.
And I remember she said something on the show with Oprah that caused me to take the few dollars I did have and buy the book. I remember reading the book. I got to page 50. That book spoke to me on page 50. I never read the rest of the book. I didn't need to. You know what it said on page 50? And years later, I told that story over and over and over to my audiences. And I started to question myself like, hey, is it really on page 50? And I pulled the book out. And yes, it's on page 50. She said, and this is what moved me. It moved me to get in the backseat of that car and write. She says, when you see greatness in someone else, it's your own greatness that you're seeing. Because if you didn't have the greatness within, you wouldn't be able to recognize that quality in someone else.
Before she launched that book, she attended my program in San Diego.
We
had a conversation.
Unbelievable.
I was working with her sister, who is the one that did most of the publicity for Chicken Soup for the Soul and many people, including myself. And Debbie was launching that. She was, at that time, before that book, she was a trainer on people in media training. Then she launched the book. Ariel Ford, her sister, helped her put that book out, launch it out.
What a small world. Wow.
It's a very small world. We're all connected.
We're all connected. And you know what I'm hearing from you is that, in a sense, hope this is taken the right way, we all have godliness within. There's something of divinity nature that's within everybody, but many people don't know where to find it. And I feel like you and others like you, of course, those of our field that love to study from the originals and then find our own voice, are able to help people find theirs.
That's it. That's the most meaningful, most inspiring, most fulfilling thing we get to do.
Isn't it though?
It is. If Zig Ziglar taught me when I was 20, if you help other people get what they want to get in life, you get what you want to get in life. And it's so true. But the thing is finding your niche, is finding the calling that you have inside you that's deeply meaningful, that comes from the voids of your life that drive you to do something that's extraordinary. And it's the challenges that started the voids. It's the challenges. That's why the more down and out you have been, the more up and in you're capable of going.
That's great. So I have something that's called the BSA results formula, that any goal that you ever, and feel free to add to it or subtract, but any goal that a person wants to achieve has to, at a minimum, include these three categories. Number one, beliefs or a mindset or an attitude. Number two, strategies and skills, right? And then number three, action. It's easy for me to live up in the philosophies, the beliefs, the ideas, the motivation. That's really easy for a guy like me. And taking action is really good for me. I can take action on ideas. The question is, I've got to find the right strategy. And I think right now, I'm curious about your take on it. With the coronavirus, this is a little bit timely. People are worried. People are living in fear. There's a lot of uncertainty. And maybe they do have ideas. Maybe they do have that voice that's speaking to them to do certain things, and they're willing to take the action. But maybe it's difficult to find that strategy or what have you. I have found that that's the least important, only because from this standpoint, you have to eventually learn it. But if you know why you want something ahead of time, you'll naturally, with passion and desire and so forth, you'll figure out the what, the how. And people are in a position right now where maybe right now in life, this is a pivot point. Think about, I was talking to my family. You know, one change tradition that we have started since this quarantine time period, not to put a timestamp on this video because what we're talking about is evergreen. It's going to last long past this time, and we're going to get through this time. This is not the end of the world. But we're now going on a walk at about 4:30, 5 o'clock every day as a family. I still have 2 children at home, and we go on this walk. We never did that till now. So we've started to look at the blessings in disguise. And anyway, I've said a lot there. Your thoughts?
Well, you said it very succinctly. When the why's big enough, the hows take care of themselves. Every human being has a set of priorities, a set of values that they're living their life by moment, that's evolving.
Yes.
And it's unique like a fingerprint, based on their vantage point, experiences, and voids that are driving them. Whatever is highest on that list of values, they spontaneously are inspired from within to act. They need no extrinsic motivation. They don't need reminding motivation or extrinsic motivation to do it. They just are called to do that. That's called the calling by theologians. But as you go down the list of values, you require progressively more extrinsic motivation to do it. And motivation is a symptom, never a solution for mastery. If you need any form of motivation from the outside, you're not living by your highest value.
Love that. Yep.
So I'm not a motivational speaker.
Mm-hmm.
Because motivation is a rhetorical persuasion of an extrinsic source to get you to do something, with punishment if you don't do it and reward if you do it, that is transient at best and misleading at most. But helping people find out what their most intrinsic value is and helping them realize they don't need motivation once they capture it and once they clarify it is very powerful.
Agreed. And as I work with companies, for example, one thing that we're trying to do is move people to this place of sense of purpose. The disconnect is sometimes it's easy for someone to find their own purpose in life, right? Their own mission, but helping people that still want to provide for their families to find the meaning and the purpose in serving the organization. Once you can connect someone's personal desires, meaning so forth, to the organization's values and means, then you have a team.
That's my specialty. You just nailed it. That's what I've been doing for 42 years.
Is it really? Oh.
So whatever's highest on your value that you're spontaneously ascribed to do, the ancient Greek Aristotle called that the telos,
Okay.
the end in mind. Napoleon Hill called it the chief aim. Tolson called it the primary objective.
Yes.
Others call it the magnificent obsession that we capture. And because it was so important, even in ancient Greek times, they made a whole study of it and called it teleology. And teleology is a study of meaning and purpose, because the most meaningful, the most purposeful, the most inspiring, the most fulfilling thing that any human being can do is access the highest value and set sail as captain of a ship in that direction and structure their life strategically to live by the highest priority and delegate the rest away. The moment they do, they have blood glucose and oxygen go into the executive center, which is the medial prefrontal cortex, the front brain. And they have automatically awakened stimuli reflexes coming out of the visual cortex 5 and 6 to be able to see clearly in their vision. And once you have vision, you flourish. Until you have vision, you perish.
Yep.
One is negentropic visually, one is entropic. It also activates the strategic planning centers. And not only do you have the data, you've got information, because in your highest value, that's when you filter through your pulvinar nuclei of the thalamus the most information to be able to make wise decisions on. And that then fires off the associative area of the cortex to execute those strategies. And it also sends GABA and glutamate down into the amygdala, to the nucleus accumbens and pallidum, and it shuts down impulses and instincts. It causes distraction from clear focus. So when you live by priority, you activate your mastery part of your brain, and you do not require external motivation, and you wake up your leader. And because you now walk your talk, because you don't procrastinate, hesitate, and frustrate, you're disciplined, reliable, and focused in your aim, you automatically believe what I say I do.
Yes.
So your determination goes up, your confidence goes up, your expansion of space and time horizons go, because every time you achieve, you want to go achieve more. And you wake up to your natural born leader, you see a clear vision, you're unstoppable. You're now working in the direction of expanding your space and time horizons until you build a vision beyond your life as a legacy. And anybody who's doing and working in that is an immortal relative to the average mortals. And no mortal can interfere with an immortal visionary. And no matter what you go through in life, no matter what it is, it's on the way for that objective. And the wise individual sees things on the way as feedback, not failure and success. The two things that interfere with greatness is the perception of failure and success, because success makes you depurpose and failure makes you repurpose. And the two together are not even important to a man on a mission.
Ooh. So as Psychocybernetic would say in his book, Maxwell Maltz, when you fail, that does not make you a failure.
It's
When you make a mistake, that doesn't make you a mistake. Because you're, like you said, you're on a mission. You have a vision. The positives and the negatives aren't going to increase or diminish your worth.
They have nothing to do with it. Anything you're infatuated with or resentful to is in your amygdala. That's your trying to find prey and trying to avoid predator mentality.
Yep.
That's a survival mentality. A thrival mentality transcends the duality, sees the clear vision, and sees no matter what happens, there's nothing but feedback to get that vision.
The older I get, I'm moving in a place now where I'm starting to research a lot about conscience. Not conscience, like, am I conscious of this? But conscience, conscience. Have you done any research on that?
Oh, yes. When I wrote the book, The Values Factor, I put a lot of work on that. I've studied 400 texts on morals, ethics, consciousness, and conscience. And there's what's interesting, the second we subordinate to the world on the outside, we confuse the conscience.
Yes.
And the second we follow the voice and the vision on the inside, the divine calling in the inside, we transcend the outer conformities, the outer moralities, and we allow the voice and the vision on the inside become more profound. And I've never seen anybody coming from there do anything other than something philanthropic and inspiring.
True. Love it. One piece of advice I feel like we should mention is when we have those thoughts and ideas and those impressions and those feelings that come to us that may seem at the outset to be weird, but they feel right. We have to capture, we have to record. Because I've had feelings come to me early on that in hindsight could have led me to a new door that would have opened up a channel of opportunity that I never walked through because I was too tired and I went back to sleep. I've since learned whenever those ideas and thoughts come, I notate them. I write them down.
Anytime you get a tear of inspiration, document the exact content of your mind. By the way, nobody can ever have fear of the unknown. Fear of the unknown does not exist. There is no such thing.
Explain that.
All you have is fear of the content that's ruminating in your mind, that you're imagining, assuming that there's going to be more drawbacks and benefits in your conscious mind at that moment. And guess what? That's under your governance. So there's no fear of the unknown. There's the fear of what you're imagining is about to occur. And once you take command of what you're imagining what to do and focus on how you would love it to do, you transcend the fear into action. Because it's not anything out there that's doing this. It's your perception, decisions, and actions again.
So rich. All right, what's your thought on the heart? You've mentioned the brain and what happens with the chemicals of the brain and so forth, all the way down through every cell of your body. How does the heart play a role in any of this?
The moment you have a perfectly balanced mind, because you have objectivity, your heart opens. And the wisdom and the intelligence of the heart, when combined with objectivity, is the path of inspiration. So the heart itself, the word courage comes from heart. That's its root. And what's interesting is, if a person really, if you go walk on a fire, if you go and jump off bungees, if you do any of these little gimmicks out there, that's insignificant compared to the courage of being true to yourself.
Yes.
That's where true courage is. The courage to stand out alone amongst a pressure from society trying to make you conform. And mediocrity is giving into the conformity, and extraordinary life is lived by transcending it. And having as Ayn Rand says, having the courage to be an unborrowed visionary, not a derived borrowed vision from others, told what to do, but an unborrowed visionary, as Emerson said, is like a fire into a city that cannot be stopped.
When I train speakers to speak, I'll often say, speak from your heart. And for many people, it goes over their head. No.
Your body language automatically is congruent when you do.
Yes.
Your body says that much of the communication is not verbal anyway, you know.
Yep,
so the
right.
second we speak from our heart, our whole physiology says the message. And you can't intellectualize that. Your body language says it all. And so the moment you speak authentically from the heart, which occurs when you have a balanced mind, because infatuations occupy space and time in your mind. We've all been infatuated and hardly slept. We've all been resentful and hardly slept. As long as we have polarized emotions instead of synthesized love from the heart and a balanced mind, we're going to be distracted and incongruent as a feedback to our physiology to let us know we're not authentic. Every symptom in our life is a feedback to try to get us authentic.
Yes. So stop fighting it.
Learn from it.
Learn from
Instead
it.
of trying to get rid of half of your life, learn that part of your life is trying to get you to be authentic. You're pursuing a fantasy. You're creating a nightmare to try to put the two together to finally be your truth. You don't need to get rid of any half of yourself to love yourself. You just need to know what that part is that you think you need to get rid of and what it's really saying. Because if you compare what it is to a fantasy of what it's supposed to be, you'll never appreciate your magnificence.
I feel illuminated. I know the audience will too. This is just rich, and you're speaking from your heart. I know that you've learned this, but it's gone from learning to a deep understanding.
Well, it's my dream to do what I do every day. So
And that's why you're one of the best out there.
Well, I've been doing it a long time, 47, almost 48 years. You know what it was inspiring me?
What?
I saw a 8-year-old boy who was a little savant, who was extraordinary, read 40 books a day. I used to read sometimes 40 books in a day, but this kid was just amazing.
Yeah.
And just amazing. And now he's consulting. He's 16. He's now consulting at $1,400 for a session to companies. He's 16 because he gave himself permission to shine. I've seen a 6-year-old girl come to my Breakthrough Experience program in Melbourne, Australia, who decided she wanted to be a speaker and writer. At age 7, she wrote her first book, came up, and we went on social media with it, her new first book called Start.
Right.
At 7. At 9, she did her second book. 12, she did her third book and was deputy mayor of Melbourne, Australia, and was a teacher educating. I used to think that many kids go through a stage where they want to play when they're a kid. What I found out is when kids feel oppressed in what their real inspiration is, and they don't see how they can fulfill what it is, they want to play as an escape from their unfulfilled moments.
Yes.
Anytime you're not fulfilling what you feel is your mission, you'll go into your amygdala and look for immediate gratification and addictive behaviors and compulsive behaviors and do all these distracting things as a symptom of unfulfillment. But the second you find them, even at the youngest ages, extraordinary development of the brain occurs. Many kids do not develop their forebrain and their medial prefrontal cortex and the executive centers until 24 to 27 years old, when they all of a sudden have the real responsibilities of going out and working and facing reality. But the real truth is, if you started those kids with accountability at a very young age, and they got to do what they're really inspired to do, they can develop that at 6.
Yes.
And extraordinary kids do extraordinary things, music and art. And you see them now on some of these America's Got Talent shows and these things, because they found that mission early. It doesn't matter the age, but if you get it, the momentum building you can get at a youth getting it is very powerful. But I've seen people get it at 72, 90, and get on with a mission at 90. So the age is not as crucial. It's accessible at all times, but you can really build momentum the sooner you get it. That's why I encourage people to find out what they really value. I have a value determining process on my website. It's complimentary. It's free for everybody. I want everybody to take advantage of it.
We'll put your link up. Yes.
Please. Because it takes about 30 minutes. Because if you ask somebody their values, they'll tell you social idealisms, truth and honesty and peace, all this other stuff. I'm not interested in what people think it is. I'm interested in what their life demonstrates. Because every decision you make is based on what you believe will give you the greatest advantage or disadvantage to what you value most.
That's right.
And I want to know what you really fill your space with, because you keep things that are important to you in your space and you push things away that's not. I want to look at what you really make time, find time, and spend time on, because you make time for things that are really valuable. You don't have time for the others. I want to look at what you energize by, because you gain energy when you're doing things high in your values and it goes down if you don't. I want to look at where you're really spending your money and what you do spontaneous expenditure on to find out what you really value. I want to look at where you're most ordered and where you're most disciplined and what you think about and visualize and internally dialogue with yourself about how you want your life that shows evidence of coming true. I want to know what you want to converse with other people about spontaneously. I want to know what inspires you with tears in your eyes. I want to know what it is that the most consistent goals that are coming true in your life. I want to look at what you spontaneously can't wait to learn and find the common threads to that and look objectively at what you're committed to and then structure your life around that and watch what happens. Unbelievable momentum building, spontaneity of action where you do not have anything but resilience.
Can a mission change at different seasons of life?
Yes. You have 2 forms. You got a gradual hypothesis and a punctate cataclysmic hypothesis that covers that. When you're doing something that you really, really are inspired to do, you make micro changes based on the changing environment around, as Jim Collins said, little bitty changes that keep building momentum to keep adapting to serve people.
Right.
If you're not living by your highest values and you're trying to conform, and because of that, you become more polarized and more absolute in your belief systems and rigid, it takes cataclysmic events to finally break you and make you adapt to changing world. And stress is the inability to adapt. And resilience is the secret to adapting. And if you're neutral, you don't feel the loss of things you seek. You don't fear the gain of things that you don't want. You're not distracted by external things. You're resilient and neutral and able to adapt to whatever's happening and see the transformation. The master lives in a world of transformation, never the illusions of gain and loss.
Let that sink in. So part of getting rid of distractions isn't focusing on getting rid of distractions.
It's focusing on what the real mission is.
That's right. It's getting in alignment with your real mission. Start listening, start feeling.
If you don't fill your day with high priority actions that inspire you, your day is designed to fill up with entropy and craziness as a feedback to let you know you're not being authentic, sir.
Powerful, powerful. All right, that's awesome. So let's shift gears on the subject of gratitude. I wrote an article that I put out just a couple days ago on LinkedIn, on Medium, and on my website. And basically, I wrote the first Swiss Family Robinson sequel in 100 years called Return to Robinson Island. You probably didn't know that, and that's okay. But I had this epiphany in 2003 as I was watching the old 1960 version of the Disney version of Swiss Family. And then I woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning with the whole story of a sequel in my mind's eye. I got out of bed that night and typed till 6 a.m. in the morning. 13 years later, I actually wrote the book. So I thought during this time period where we're at right now, with the world being technically in a way shut down, I thought, what would Swiss Family Robinson have to say? How would they respond instead of react to the current situation? And I gave 6 points, but at the end of those 6 points, this is what I wrote. As you find your life disrupted, remember you are in charge of your own destiny. No matter how difficult your circumstance may become, you always have a choice on how to respond. In his classic book, As a Man Thinketh, Viktor Frankl points out that many of those who survived the Nazi concentration camp said that they, quote, benefited from the captivity, seeing it as a growth experience. As horrendous as Auschwitz was, Frankl taught our core drive as humans is our search for meaning, the way in which a man accepts his fate and all the suffering that it entails, the way in which he takes up his cross gives him ample opportunity, even under the most difficult circumstances, to add deeper meaning to his life. And then Russian novelist, short story writer, and philosopher Fyodor Dostoevsky, I'm not even saying his name right, once stated, the only one thing I dread is not to be worthy of my sufferings.
Aristotle described something. To extract meaning out of life, it's finding the mean between the volatilities that we experience. If you have a stock market going up and down, and you do an Ibbotson chart on it over a period of time, you can find what the mean trajectory of overall the ups and downs represent. That mean is the mean between all the ups and all the downs neutralizing each other. And he showed that to extract meaning out of things, yes, is to be able to find the downs inside the ups and the ups inside the downs. For instance, let's say the market goes up and you think, wow, I'm making money on what I used to buy. I purchased. But what I'm now doing, if I'm dollar cost averaging, I'm paying more for a share. So the downside is I'm paying more for a share, but the upside is I'm making money off the past shares I bought. If it goes down, I'm not making money off my old shares, but I'm now buying at a dirt cheap price.
Right.
So the truth is that if you see positive without negative or negative without positive, you're not seeing the whole. You're conscious of one and unconscious the other, or conscious one, unconscious the other. Extracting meaning is to find the downsides and the ups and the downs to be able to bring yourself back into the mean. The individual that can do that, Viktor Frankl, in his search for meaning or whatever, yep, he basically showed that in these downside, here was the meaning. And he was the one that survived when the rest of them died because they were holding on to fantasies. If you compare your current reality to a fantasy, you'll be depressed about your current reality. You've got to be able to find the magnificence of where you are at this moment in time.
Neutral thinking. Is that what I heard you say?
Graced. You have to be grateful and see the meaning and the magnificence in the moment.
In his TED Talk, David Steindl-Rast, the Benedictine monk, made this statement. He talked about being grateful, quote, "Does that mean that we can be grateful for everything?" He said, "Certainly not. We cannot be grateful for violence, for war, for oppression, for exploitation. On a personal level, we cannot be grateful for the loss of a friend or unfaithfulness or for bereavement. I didn't say we could be grateful for everything. I said we could be grateful for every moment," because he says in every moment we have a choice on how we're going to respond, what we're going to do next. And we can be grateful that as a human being, we have choice.
We also have the capacity to find the hidden meaning of even deaths. I do it every weekend in my breakthrough experience. We have people, I've developed a methodology in how to dissolve grief. And we can take, even in those situations. So I would even differ from what that man just said. I would just say that there's nothing that the mortal body can experience that the immortal soul can't love. Every single thing that goes in our life, we can find meaning in it, and we can find something to be grateful for. I assure you, if we look deep enough. I teach people how to do that, because otherwise they become victims of history, not masters of destiny.
At the core, I feel that that is true.
I've just developed the strategies on how to do it. Because the first time we think something's terrible, and then a day, a week, a month, a year, 5 years later, we go, thank God that occurred. But why have the wisdom of the ages with the aging process? We can have the wisdom of the ages right on the spot by asking the right question. The quality of our life is based on the quality of the questions we ask. I've developed the questions to help you find in that thing that you think is tragic, the gift. And the moment you do, you realize it's not even tragic in the first place. It's just part of a higher order in your life. There's nothing out of order in your life, and there's nothing missing in your life if you know how to ask the right questions. There's just something to be graced about.
So what I hear you saying is, look at this time right now and find the blessings in it.
It's not a crisis. It's not a blessing. It's a synthesis and synchronicity of both at the same time. Wisdom sees both at the same time, doesn't get attached to either side.
Thank you. Well, that's a great distinction.
Because if otherwise you think this is bad and it's going to get better. It's not about better or worse. Right now in the moment, if we stop and look at it, New Delhi has the cleanest air in 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
Oil prices have dropped. I mean, we can make a list. I have students around the world, all over the world, making a list of the blessings that's going on. And the lists are so numerous, I don't have time to even read them all. There is thousands of upsides simultaneously with what we think is downside. If we're conscious of the downside with some sort of subjective bias and we're not looking at the upsides, that's our choice, and we're creating our own nemesis. If we're choosing to see the upsides, we create our fantasy. I'm not interested in fantasies and nightmares. I'm interested in the magnificence of seeing both sides and learning how to master the ability to adapt and resiliently use whatever's happening to my mission.
Who was it that said, nothing is good nor bad, but thinking makes it so?
We're the ones that we make a mountain out of a molehill, a molehill out of a mountain. It's up to us. It's our perception, decisions, and actions that determine our destiny.
Wow. I know that your time is valuable and this interview has to come to an end, but I feel like, brother, we could talk for a long time about these beautiful truths. And I really mean that they're truths. By the way, as I was doing some research on you and I was watching some interviews and so forth, resonated. It was awesome. When you're talking about values, years ago, my first audio program I ever put out 20 years ago, it's called The Power to Shape Your Life. And in it, I did a whole CD on values based on my research at the time. And I determined, and I'm just curious about your take on it, because I don't know where you stand on this, but maybe you can nudge me or add something to it. But I always thought, I've taught that there's emotional values and there are vehicle values. And the vehicle values are the things of our world that we value, in a sense, the means to an end, and the end is the emotion or the spirit or whatever, that the vehicle values always end up, they're subordinate to the emotional values. When you take people through the values process, do you have them identify temporal values versus spiritual values, for example?
Whatever's highest on your value is a transcendental, inspiring state. There's synthesized feelings and there's polarized emotional feelings. When you see positive without negative or negative without positive, you have polarized emotional feelings. When you see them synchronistically, like the exact same moment, both of them, you have synthesized feelings. Those are the spiritual inspired values. The ones below, the lower values, are the ones that cause all kind of volatility and emotions. So we have to distinguish between emotional polarized values and true synthesized inspired. Gratitude, love, inspiration, enthusiasm, certainty, and presence are ones that are synthesized.
Yes.
Joy and sorrow, happy and sad, and all the polarities, infatuation, resentment, admire, despise, seek, and avoid are all impulsive and instincts of our lower amygdala. The ones that are most inspiring, that call us, leave us not in a state of uncertainty, leave us in a state of clarity and certainty. Those inspired states bring tears of grace to our eyes. Those are the ones that you want to guide your life by.
And I believe that when we get into those values that you just said,
The highest values.
our highest values, we unleash or illuminate our conscience.
That's
We
it.
start living a life of conscience. We start leading as a leader in a company from a place of conscience.
We don't need extrinsic. The word government comes from governmentus, one who can govern their own mind. And when you're in the executive center, you govern your own mind. You don't need extrinsic moralities to guide you. That's for people that don't have governance over themselves, run by amygdalas, looking for impulses and immediate gratifications. You have an intrinsic system that automatically exemplifies the highest self-actualized morality of life.
Wow, Dr. Demartini, listen, I can't wait to listen to this podcast myself after the production is done with this and go through it again. I feel like there's so many aha moments that can be taken from this, and you slide them in very succinctly and carefully, and they're rich and meaningful. And wow, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for the show. Thank you for your insights, and thank you for your great questions.
No, it's great. Thank you. How can people find you? What lead them to the place where they can get to know you better and participate in what you're doing?
The simplest thing, just go to drdemartini.com. I'm all over the web, so just drdemartini.com. And it's an educational website. You could spend the rest of your life on there.
Yeah,
You
okay.
could spend the rest of your life just learning on there, because there's thousands of podcasts and webinars and TV and radio, newspapers, and all kind of stuff on there. Just information on there. It's educational for people.
You know what's interesting? You started off with the story about having the physical impediment when you were young or born. What was it? Young or born, right? When I was born, I was too big for my mom's tummy, and my feet were club-footed. And so for the first year of my life, I had little casts on, and every 2 weeks they would cut the cast off, stretch my feet out, and then in time, right, I have normal feet today. One of the great messages I think that people can get from this is it's not about where you start, it's where you finish. And getting to that finish point is a lifelong process, but you can speed it up by unleashing that conscience, by unleashing and allowing yourself to harmonize with your higher values. All of a sudden, your world will not only become more fulfilled, you'll see more success and happiness in your life.
Well, I believe that the goals are in time and space, but a mission is through time and space. We transcend even the illusions. The mind adds space and time to the soul extracts out space and time from the mind. We're in a state of unconditional love. We transcend the illusions and the limitations that we perceive in space and time, and amazing manifestations occur instantaneously and spontaneously, because the people, places, things, ideas, and events show up as our life purposely the moment we're actually in a spaceless, timeless now.
Beautiful. All right, make sure that you go over to drdemartini.com. The link will be up here as well. Thank you for being on the call. This was great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Very, very fantastic. And thank you.
You betcha.